Hello, my dear friends. How are you doing? Hope you are having an amazing day and not having to deal with drama. Ready for new stories I have for you today? Let's go to the first one. And don't forget to listen to the end of the story, guys, to hear my insights. Enjoy the stories. And don't forget to like and subscribe. And of course, don't forget to leave a comment. For context, I'm an 18-year-old girl, and I've had a pretty rocky relationship with my parents for as long as I can remember. They've always favored my older sister, Emily, 22 female, who is undeniably the golden child. I can't even count the number of times my needs, dreams, and even basic wants have been ignored to accommodate her demands. But this time, they crossed the line, and now everything has spiraled out of control. For as long as I can remember, Emily has been the center of attention. She's the pretty one, the talented one, the one with big dreams that my parents think can do no wrong. I was the afterthought, the shadow in her spotlight. If Emily wanted something, it didn't matter what anyone else had planned. She got it. My parents often brushed off my achievements and milestones to celebrate hers. When I graduated high school, they barely acknowledged it because Emily had such a tough year in college. Birthdays were no exception. Each year, my birthdays were pretty minimal, while Emily's were elaborate affairs, even into her 20s. Turning 18, however, felt like a huge deal. I wanted a nice celebration, nothing over the top, just a gathering with my close friends and family. I saved up my own money to contribute, and for once, my parents actually agreed to host a party for me. I was thrilled. It felt like, finally, I'd have a moment that was just mine. A week before my birthday, Emily showed up at our parents' house in tears, saying she'd just broken up with her boyfriend. Now, I know breakups can be rough, but here's the thing. Emily's relationships never lasted more than a few months, and she'd had several by this point. Each one came with a melodramatic breakup, which became an excuse for everyone to cater to her every need. This was no different. She started making her usual demands. She needed comfort, she needed attention, and apparently, she couldn't bear the thought of seeing people celebrate when she was so miserable. I didn't even need to ask to know where this was headed, but I was hoping that just this once, my parents would put me first. Of course, I was wrong. My parents called me into the living room and gently told me they were canceling my birthday party. They said Emily needed the support of her family, and that a party would be insensitive given her emotional state. They asked me to understand and make this small sacrifice for my sister's well-being. When I protested, pointing out how much this milestone meant to me, they scolded me for being selfish and ungrateful. I was crushed. My 18th birthday, a milestone I'd been looking forward to for years, was being erased because my sister was, once again, getting her way. I felt like an afterthought in my own family. I couldn't take it anymore. I felt like I was suffocating in that house, where my feelings and needs didn't seem to matter. So I packed my bag and went to stay with my grandfather, my dad's father, who lived about 20 minutes away. My grandfather and I had always been close. He's an old-fashioned, no-nonsense kind of guy, but he's always treated me with respect and kindness. He knew my parents favored Emily, and while he rarely intervened, he'd always been there as a source of support. When I showed up at his door, barely holding back tears, he took one look at me and welcomed me inside without question. Over the next few days, I opened up to him about everything. The years of favoritism, the neglect, the canceled birthday party. He listened quietly, but I could see the anger simmering beneath the surface. My grandfather is a man of few words, but he doesn't tolerate injustice, especially within his own family. I decided to stay with him, and he was fully supportive of my choice. He even threw me a small birthday gathering with a cake, a few friends, and some of his friends who've known me since I was a kid. It wasn't the big party I dreamed of, but it was genuine, and for the first time, I felt truly valued. My parents barely called, except to tell me how disappointed they were that I'd abandoned the family when my sister needed us. Now, here's when things get interesting. What my parents seem to forget is that my grandfather is quite wealthy. He's owned several properties and a successful business, and while he's never flaunted it, he's always been very careful about his assets. For years, my parents assumed they'd inherit everything from him, especially the house they lived in, which, I should mention, is actually his house, not theirs. He let them live there rent-free for years, assuming they'd take care of it and eventually inherit it. My grandfather had previously hinted to me that he was thinking of updating his will, but I never asked for details. About a month after I moved in, he sat me down and told me he'd decided to change his will. He was planning to leave the majority of his estate to me, including the house my parents lived in. I was shocked. I'd never asked for any of this, but he said he was tired of watching my parents treat me like a second-class citizen while catering to Emily's every whim. He wanted to ensure that I had a secure future, regardless of how my parents chose to treat me. I didn't know what to say, but I thanked him, feeling a mixture of gratitude and disbelief. My grandfather went ahead with the paperwork, and I never mentioned a word to my parents, knowing it would cause chaos. Fast forward to last week. My parents received a notice informing them of the change. They were furious, especially my dad, who felt betrayed that his own father would cut him out in favor of a spoiled, ungrateful teenager. Yes, he actually called me that. My mom was in tears, saying this was unfair and that I'd manipulated my grandfather into giving me the inheritance. They showed up at my grandfather's house, demanding that he reverse the changes. My grandfather was firm, though. He told them that he'd seen how they'd treated me over the years and that he wasn't going to reward them for neglecting one of their children. They tried to argue, but he didn't budge. He even mentioned the canceled birthday party, which shocked them. I guess they hadn't realized how much he knew about their treatment of me. He then said they need to pack their things and leave the house in a month because he had enough of their disgusting behavior and they don't deserve to use the house for free anymore and that I will be moving in there soon. When they realized they couldn't convince him, they turned to me. They begged me to talk to my grandfather, to fix this mistake, and convince him not to kick them out of the house. They said they'd change, that they'd make it up to me, that they'd finally treat me equally. They even promised to throw me a make-up birthday party, as if that would erase years of neglect. I told them that I didn't trust them to change, and that they'd only ever shown me kindness when they wanted something from me. I reminded them of all the times they'd put Emily first, all the birthdays and celebrations I'd missed out on because of her needs. I told them I was done being their second choice. My dad lost his temper and called me selfish and ungrateful, saying that family should stick together and that I was tearing us apart. But I stood my ground, telling him that they'd already torn the family apart by showing blatant favoritism for years. I said that I wasn't going to convince my grandfather to change his mind and that they'd have to face the consequences of their actions. Since that confrontation, my parents have been blowing up my phone with messages and calls, alternating between begging and guilt-tripping. Emily, of course, has inserted herself into the situation, calling me greedy and saying that I was ruining everything. She claims that I'm destroying our family over a petty grudge and that I should be grateful that they let me have any attention at all. It's honestly laughable at this point. My grandfather has made it clear that he's not changing his mind, and he's fully supportive of me staying with him. He's even suggested that we look into getting me set up for college, something my parents had dismissed as unnecessary since Emily needed the bulk of their financial help. Now my parents are facing the reality of being kicked out of the house they've lived in for years, and they're scrambling to figure out what to do. They've lost the safety net they always assumed would be there, and they're angry that the golden child routine didn't pay off the way they expected. They're reaching out to extended family, painting me as the ungrateful daughter who's punishing them unjustly. I feel a strange mix of guilt and satisfaction. I didn't ask for any of this. I never expected to inherit anything from my grandfather, let alone the house my parents lived in. But I can't deny that part of me feels vindicated. After years of being ignored, belittled, and cast aside, it feels like justice. But my parents' words haunt me. They keep saying that family should stick together, that I'm selfish for not stepping in to help them. A part of me wonders if I should forgive them, if I should be the bigger person and try to keep the peace. But then I remember all the birthdays, all the times they pushed me aside for Emily, and all the years they made me feel like I was nothing compared to her. So, Reddit. Am I the a-hole for refusing to convince my grandfather not to kick my parents out and accepting his inheritance? OP's parents treated OP horribly for years, and now that their golden child routine isn't paying off, they suddenly want to make things right. It's not OP's responsibility to fix this. They made their bed, and now they have to lie in it. If they truly cared about OP and wanted a relationship, they would have treated OP equally all along, not just when it affects them. OP should be very happy and grateful that she has Granddad who supports her and stands by her. And now let's hear the community's opinion. I can see why you're hurt, and you're completely justified in feeling that way. But maybe consider finding a middle ground, not for them, but for yourself. If they truly change, letting them back in with strong boundaries might give you some peace of mind down the line. Sometimes, holding on to that anger can weigh you down. Just make sure they actually earn any forgiveness, and don't expect you to fix everything without making genuine amends. Absolutely not the a-hole. They've been enabling Emily's entitlement and ignoring your needs for years, and now they're facing the consequences. I find it ironic they're accusing you of tearing the family apart, when they never put in the effort to keep it together in the first place. The fact that they're trying to guilt you with empty promises like a make-up birthday party just shows they don't get it. They're not sorry. They're just scared of losing their financial security. You're not the a-hole, but I can understand why you might feel conflicted. It's a big decision, and cutting off family isn't easy, even if they've wronged you. I'd suggest talking more with your grandfather about it to make sure it's a choice you won't regret later. You deserve to stand up for yourself and have the security he's offering you. At the same time, remember that your choices now could have a lasting impact on everyone involved, and it's okay to take time before making any final decisions. Honestly, I'm at the point where I no longer give a crap about this situation. Anyways, it's a funny story. Today, my dad tried to pull me aside and acted all nice, just so he can say that I ruined his and my mother's relationship by exposing him. Keep in mind that my mom found everything out on her own and from his friends. He tried to guilt trip me by saying that I hugely wronged him by telling my mother that he was still speaking to the other lady while my mom was in the hospital, despite the fact that my mom already knew, and he knew she knew. He genuinely expects us, my siblings and I, to cover for him. He said that I should right my wrong by telling my mom that she's crazy for wanting to leave him and that she should behave. However, he said it's my choice if I want to do this or not. I couldn't help but laugh, but I just said okay to everything he was telling me to do. I didn't do anything as I've told them I'm not getting involved anymore. While they were having yet another conversation about him cheating, I was just sitting cuddling with my youngest brother who was trying to sleep. He then calls me out and says, "See, your children don't respect me. I asked her, me, to do something for me and she didn't." My mom obviously asked, "What did you ask her to do?" I said to her, "Oh, you don't want to know what he asked me to do." He then interrupted me and said, "Why are you telling her?" I said, "I'm not going to, and I'm not going to do what you told me to do." And he just changed the subject. He's spiraling. Careful though, he knows he's going down and wants to take everyone with him. Still refusing to take responsibility for his own choices and behaviors, I see. Sounds exhausting. Always trying to find someone to blame. This is not your circus. You just have ringside seats. You've got great instinct staying out of it. You didn't cause it and you can't fix it. You can talk it over with your siblings so they know this isn't their fault either. Remind both parents that you aren't their therapist or housekeeper, that everybody needs to pull their weight and to talk to people outside the family to get a better perspective. Try to schedule fun time with friends so you don't dwell on the drama at home. You will survive this, but it's gonna suck for way too long right now. Your dad will blame anyone in order to not suffer the consequences of his own actions. I hope your mom doesn't let him get away with it. Sounds like he has a personality disorder, zero accountability, zero sense of right and wrong. If he has never behaved like this before, I'd suspect a medical issue like a brain tumor. The fact that he expects his children to take his side is especially loathsome. Thankfully, you won't inherit whatever the heck it is. Even with all the evidence laid out for him, he'll deny and make up an excuse. He's convinced himself that my mom brainwashed us to hate him, which is not true. I don't know why he thinks there shouldn't be any consequences for the stuff he does to us. I'm a 34 female. My husband is 30 male. Last week I was home alone one evening. My husband was supposed to be working late, and this young girl knocked on my door. She seemed confused when she saw me and said she had the wrong apartment, but then a few minutes later, I saw her sitting out on the stairs looking upset. I approached her since she looked familiar and asked if she needed help, and she said no. I didn't want to leave her alone in the dark out there, so I pushed further and asked why she knocked on my door. She eventually said she was looking for Jeff, my husband. Shocked, I asked her why, and she said she was supposed to meet him at the pool, but couldn't get in without his key card. She said she left her phone at home and decided to knock on his door. Flabbergasted, I informed her I was his wife and asked her to come inside with me. After a lot of convincing, she finally broke down in tears and admitted that they'd been dating for over a month, and she claims he told her he was single. I asked how they met, and she said she works at the local pet store, which is why she's familiar since we take turns going there. I got her to tell me about every interaction with him. She says he takes her to lunch often, and once dancing, and once even they watched a movie at our condo. I confirmed the date was a day we fought, and I spent the night at my parents' house. She said that all of the pics on our fridge weren't there, and she didn't see anything that belongs to a woman. When I got home, our pics were in a kitchen drawer, and my workout stuff was tossed in the hall closet. She says they never had intercourse. That night, when Jeff returned, he got angry and refused to discuss it. So the next day, I went to her work and spoke to her manager. She looks too young for 18, and her manager confirmed she was 18 and just graduated high school. She says she knew her parents and gave me their number. When I called, her parents were shocked and did not know of their daughter seducing married 30-year-old men and promised they would keep her away from him and take away her phone and car. My own parents think I did the right thing, but my sister and friends all think I shouldn't have ratted her out to her work and parents. Am I the a-hole for wanting to confirm her age and see that she's thoroughly humiliated for her actions? Edit to clarify. I did want to confirm her age since she looked much younger than she said, and I do think her parents deserve to know so they can watch out for her better. But I do believe the signs were there for her to see he was married. Our condo is clearly decorated by a woman. He's home nearly every night after 7, so he only sees her in the day except for twice that she admitted. My husband still refuses to discuss it with me and isn't accepting my calls. I'm currently staying at my parents' house, which is why I wanted her parents to know in case my husband feels free to pursue her now. They didn't know their daughter was seducing married 30-year-old men. Yes, the a-hole for this alone. There's a big age gap and difference in power dynamics. Don't blame her for his crappy actions. You shouldn't have gone to her work or contacted her parents. Deal with your husband and stop trying to duck up her life. Edited to add. Your edit just makes this worse. You think she looks significantly younger than 18 and still can't see this as predatory as duck on your husband's part? Really? Yes, the a-hole. Your husband is the one who should be humiliated for his actions, not the teenager he lied to and misled. He's your spouse and presumably promised to be faithful to you, while she's a victim of a liar and a cheater. Yes, the a-hole. Your husband lied to this 18-year-old, if she was that when he started, and told her he was single, and you are claiming that she is at fault. She seduced the 30-year-old man. Nope. Jeff lied and took advantage of a high school girl, and now you are blaming her? What the duck is wrong with you? Jeff is the problem here. He is the one who cheated. You doubled down and blamed her? You are an a-hole here. I, 32 female, married my boyfriend, 33 male, yesterday, and things could have gone as well as they did, given what happened. My sister-in-law, 24 female, has always been close with my husband, which is great and all, but sometimes it seems like she's obsessed with him, and a little too close if I'm being honest. She tackles him, sits a little too close to him, always grabbing his arm, his waist, things of that nature. So my sister-in-law chose not to be in the wedding party to do scheduling issues, so she was just going to be a guest. I walk down the aisle and everything is wonderful. I get to the altar, and as the priest is saying some stuff, I look over towards the side furthest from the aisle, and I see my sister-in-law, dressed, in a ducking red dress. I was fuming. It took everything for me in that moment to not scream. Of course, sister-in-law wore the color that traditionally meant you ducked the groom. How convenient. While I was angry, I had to finish my vows. I was planning to deal with sister-in-law after the ceremony, but everybody, including her, had rushed out to go to the reception. Husband and I arrived at the reception, and while husband was taking his seat at our table, I told him that I needed to talk to sister-in-law really quick. I found her at the table and told her that we needed to step outside and talk. We got outside, and this is where I went off on her. I asked her what the hell she was thinking wearing a red dress to my wedding, how dumb she thinks I am to assume that I wouldn't notice, and how dumb she is for thinking I would be okay with her wearing a "I want to duck my brother" dress. She called me insane for suggesting I would even insinuate that, and told me that no one else seems to have a problem with her dress. I told her that it's not everyone else's wedding. I then told her to leave. Here, she starts begging to stay. But of course I wasn't having it, So she finally gives up and leaves. Given the drinks, the music, and party, husband didn't really notice that his sister was gone. However, later in the night, he finally noticed and asked around for his sister. Word got out that she talked to me and he confronted me about it. I told husband that I had to kick her out because of her dress. He was not happy. He called me an idiot for doing that and asked me why I couldn't have at least talked to him first. I just assumed that he felt the same way. Afterwards, we get back to the hotel and fall asleep. This morning, I could tell that he is still pretty pissed at me. Word had gotten out about sister-in-law being kicked out, so I have gotten a few texts from cousins calling me an a-hole. Honestly, I don't think I'm an a-hole for telling my sister-in-law, who was wearing something inappropriate to my wedding, to get out. But let's see. Am I the a-hole? Yes, the a-hole. I started reading this thinking, oh, maybe sister-in-law wore white to the wedding. But red? I've literally never heard of that before. And aside from people wearing white to a wedding, who the hell cares? I think you're looking into what color she wore because of how uncomfortable you are with your husband's relationship with his own sister. You're clearly jealous and need to ask yourself why that is. Yes, the a-hole. I had to Google red dresses at weddings because your interpretation was something I had never heard. It is still something I've never heard. Barring cultures where red is the bridal color, it seems to come down to red standing out and taking attention from the bride. However, yes, the a-hole for making crap up about red dresses at weddings to justify kicking out his sister. They have a close relationship. You don't like it. You are actually jealous of his sister. This is a you problem. Yes, the a-hole. I would have the marriage annulled if I was him. I, 30 male, am married to my high school sweetheart, Linda, 30 female, and we have 2 beautiful children together. I'm really happy with my life. But recently my wife has uncovered something that I agree was bad at the time, but don't see it as something unforgivable because of the good that came out of it. Back in high school, it was always Linda's dream to go to college and study abroad in Europe. So much so that she got a part-time job to pay for extra tutoring and became fluent in French. While I wouldn't mind a trip to Europe for a couple of days, I didn't like the idea of just living there, even if it was temporary, and told Linda as much. Without hesitation, she told me that it was fine if I didn't want to go, but she would be going regardless, and we could either do long distance or break up if I still wanted to continue a relationship with her. That really hurt, and I felt as if she didn't care about me or our relationship if she could just quickly and easily say something like that to me after I expressed my concerns. My friends started making jokes about how Linda was going to go overseas to sleep around, and it got to me. We ended up breaking up, and it sucked because while I was miserable, Linda was beaming with excitement over her future, as if she never cared about our relationship at all. Initially, Linda planned on applying to schools only in England or France, but her parents convinced her to apply to schools in-state as a backup, and that was the only one she ended up attending. Linda was devastated at not getting into any of her European schools, and when she tried to do a study abroad program, she ended up not getting the scholarships and grants she needed and couldn't go. Linda felt completely defeated, but during that time we reconnected and eventually got married. For our honeymoon, Linda wanted to go to Paris, but after her parents, my parents, and I explained the benefits of putting the money towards a house, she relented. I know that Europe was always a sore subject, but I thought that Linda was still just as happy as I was. After the recent birth of our twins, Linda's mother finally admitted to stealing Linda's acceptance letters to the European schools and giving her fake rejection ones, as well as lying about not having the money to finance her trip abroad. Linda exploded at her mom and immediately went no contact with both her parents. At first, I was just as shocked as she was, but after 3 months, I felt that it was time to finally start rebuilding some bridges. When I talked to Linda about this, she was offended that I would suggest such a thing and stated that her parents were dead to her and would never be allowed to see our children. I told Linda that while I understood her pain, she also needed to see the good that came from this, as we may never have gotten back together and our children wouldn't exist. Linda then snapped at me and has been giving me the cold shoulder since. I was just trying to get her to look on the bright side of things. Am I the a-hole? Edited to add. Because I keep seeing this, I just want to clarify some things. 1. Again, I had no idea what her mom did until she confessed it. 2. I don't support what her parents did. 3. Linda's parents stated that their reasoning behind this was because they were worried she would get kidnapped while overseas. 4. While getting a house makes more financial sense than a fancy trip, it's not like Paris is going anywhere, and I have every intention of taking Linda on a trip to Europe in the future. 5. Yes, I am aware that Linda could have had children if her life went the way she initially wanted it to. But the point is that those children would be different children, and not the twins we have. Yes, the a-hole. Her parents' manipulation worked out for you. Well, at least until your wife divorces you. Seriously, you couldn't even take a trip to Paris? For her honeymoon? You said you wouldn't mind visiting, but it sounds like you actively despise her cherished dreams. I hope she leaves you. Absolutely yes, the a-hole. Dude, she lost several opportunities she was incredibly excited about because her parents were manipulative. So many things she wanted lost because of them. And you're backing them up because you couldn't stomach the idea of going long distance because of unfounded jokes. And because it got you back together? Your friends are a-holes too. What kind of joke is that? I get being upset you and your partner don't have matching ideals for your future, and that long distance is tough. But she should have not been forced to give up opportunities she wanted, despite everyone around her forcing her otherwise. She owes her parents nothing after such an admission. If they were willing to go that far to keep her in the States, I dread for your kids' experiences with them. That's not a hug and make up sort of situation her parents have caused.